License and registration, sweetheart. And do try not to shake. This isn't hard. The words cut through the checkpoint like a blade scraping metal. 6:40 in the morning at the north gate of Fort Calloway, and the air already smelled like diesel and wet gravel. A generator hummed somewhere behind the guard shack. Boots crunched on the frost-hard ground as the line of vehicles idled, waiting their turn. 19 soldiers stood in formation nearby, running early PT before the sun cleared the tree line, and every one of them turned to watch. Captain Dale Rourke liked an audience. He always had. 3 tours, a chest full of ribbons he mentioned more than he'd earned them, and the kind of laugh that invited everyone else to join in. He stood with his arms crossed like he owned not just this gate, but the entire eastern seaboard. His shadow fell long across the hood of her car, across her hands still resting on the wheel. She was 29, small enough that men like Rourke never looked twice, which was exactly the point. Her jacket was plain, unmarked, sleeves rolled to the elbow, no rank insignia anywhere on her. Civilian contractor badge clipped to her collar. Her hands moved to the glove box with the exact, economical grip of someone who had drawn a weapon under fire more times than she could count on both hands. She did not look up. She did not flinch. She breathed in, 4 counts, held it 4, released it 4, held the emptiness 4. Rourke mistook her stillness for fear. It was the opposite. Stillness was the only language she had left that didn't require a security clearance to speak. "I asked you a question," Rourke said, louder now, playing to the line of soldiers behind him. "Or are you just here to deliver coffee to the real logistics office?" A few of the soldiers laughed. Not all of them. One did not. Master Sergeant Hollis Reyes stood near the guard shack with a clipboard he wasn't really reading. 61 years old, 38 years in. The kind of man used to being obeyed without ever raising his voice to get it. He'd been watching her since her car rolled up to the gate. Not her face. Her hands. The way she'd shifted the vehicle into park without glancing at the shifter. The way her eyes had already mapped 3 exits before Rourke opened his mouth. He'd seen that particular economy of motion exactly twice before in his career, and both times it had ended with men twice her size on the ground before they understood what happened. "Sir," she said. 4 words, no more. "My credentials are current." "Current," Rourke repeated, like the word amused him. "We'll be the judge of that, won't we?" He turned to the soldiers. "Step out of the vehicle." She stepped out, calm, unhurried, the kind of calm that makes people check exits. Rourke's radio crackled at his hip, background noise he ignored, too busy enjoying himself. He circled her car once, slow, the way a man circles something he's already decided to own. "Contractor badge," he said, reading it off her collar without asking. "Logistics support." "Cute. You know we get 3 of you a week trying to slip through with expired clearance, don't you? Trying to see how far a pretty face gets you." "It's current," she said again. Same 4 words. Same flat calm. Something about her didn't sit right with Reyes, and he'd learned a long time ago not to argue with that feeling. He set the clipboard down. Rourke didn't notice. He was watching his audience, not her. "Search the vehicle," he told the 2 privates flanking him, and the words came out proud, like he'd just ordered something historic. The soldiers hesitated a half-second. Searching a badged contractor without cause wasn't exactly textbook, but nobody argued with a captain performing for a crowd. They started with the trunk. She said nothing. 4 counts in. Hold 4. The watch on her wrist, old, scratched, government issue in a way nobody at that gate would recognize, ticked past 6:43 a.m. They found nothing incriminating in the trunk because there was nothing to find. That didn't stop Rourke. If anything, the empty trunk seemed to offend him personally, like she'd cheated him out of a bigger scene. "Run her plates," he snapped. "And pull the badge number. I want to know exactly who's been handing out logistics clearance to civilians who can't even answer a simple question." "Sir, with respect," one of the privates started. "Her paperwork's clean." "We don't really have." I said, "Run it." Rourke's voice sharpened, thinner now, the performance cracking at the edges the way it always does when nobody claps on cue. "Detain her pending verification. Full report. I want this documented top to bottom." That was the moment. Reyes felt it before he understood it, the specific, cold certainty that Rourke had just done something he could not undo. Detain her pending verification meant a name went into a system. Full report meant a flag went somewhere it was never supposed to go. Reyes had seen careers end over smaller mistakes made by smarter men. She didn't argue as they walked her toward the holding room near the guardhouse. She didn't ask what she was being charged with. She counted her breaths instead. 4 and 4 and 4 and 4, and let them lead her exactly where her own operation had never planned for her to go. Into the system, into the paperwork, into the exact kind of official record she'd spent 3 years making sure never existed. Somewhere across post, in a windowless room with 6 monitors and a coffee pot nobody ever cleaned, a very different clock had just started running. By 9:15, the story had already made its way around the battalion, the way stories do. Fast, mangled, funny to everyone who hadn't been there. Rourke told it 3 separate times before lunch, each version slightly more heroic than the last, the woman slightly more insolent, his own restraint slightly more remarkable. He liked the sound of his own version. He liked it enough to walk it up the chain himself, unprompted, eager for someone above him to notice how thoroughly he'd handled a security concern before breakfast. What he did not know, what nobody at that gate knew, was that the badge number he'd pulled belonged to a logistics identity that had been quietly built, layer by layer, over 11 months by people who did not appreciate having their work exposed to a records search initiated by a captain hunting applause. The badge was real enough to pass casual inspection. It was not real enough to survive a formal verification request routed through the wrong office. And Rourke, thrilled with his own diligence, had routed it through exactly the wrong office. In the holding room, she sat with her hands folded on the table, still, unbothered, the posture of someone waiting out weather rather than an interrogation. A young private named Ferris had been assigned to watch her, more out of procedure than suspicion, and he found the assignment increasingly uncomfortable. She didn't pace. She didn't protest. She asked for water once, said thank you when it came, and otherwise sat in a silence so complete it started to feel like something in the room besides the two of them. "You're not what I expected," Ferris admitted, mostly to fill the quiet. "Most people aren't," she said. 6 words. It was the longest thing she'd said all morning. Master Sergeant Reyes found an excuse to walk past the holding room 4 times in the next hour. Each time he told himself it was routine. Each time he noticed something new, the scar along her left forearm, old, pale, the kind that comes from a blade and not an accident. The watch, government issue. The model they stopped manufacturing years before she could have been old enough to have earned it through ordinary channels. The way she sat facing the door, not because she was anxious, but because facing the door was simply what you did, a habit worn so deep it no longer registered as a choice. The kind of habit that doesn't come from a manual. Rourke, meanwhile, had escalated. Thrilled by the attention his security incident was generating, He petitioned the duty officer to authorize a full personnel file pull. Not just badge verification, but a cross-reference against active investigations, against watch lists, against anything that might make his morning even more impressive. He framed it as diligence. It was theater. He wanted a bigger stage, and he was building one out of a woman's classified life without understanding what he was building. Something about this woman. He couldn't place it. But it was there. It sat behind his confidence, like a splinter he refused to acknowledge, and every time it surfaced he silenced it with another loud sentence to his audience of privates. That was his pattern. It always had been. He mistook apparent hierarchy, his bars, his ribbons, his volume, for the real thing, and real authority had never once asked his permission to exist. At 10:50, the cross-reference request Rourke filed landed on a desk it was never supposed to reach. A junior analyst in a classified compartment 3 buildings away read the badge number twice, then a third time, then picked up a phone that wasn't supposed to ring before noon. Somewhere in that building, a supervisor set down a coffee cup very carefully, the way people do right before their whole day changes shape. Here's a question worth sitting with for a second. How many people have you underestimated in your life simply because they didn't raise their voice to prove themselves? How many quiet ones have you walked straight past, never once wondering what they were carrying? Rourke had done it in the first 90 seconds at that gate, and he was about to learn exactly what it costs a man to be wrong that publicly. By 11:30, the request Rourke filed with such pride had triggered a real-world clock, though he had no idea it existed. 23 minutes until a scheduled communications window closed on an entirely separate operation, one that depended on her identity staying exactly as quiet as it had been for the past 11 months. 63 minutes until an automated protocol activated, one designed specifically to respond to unauthorized cross-references against her badge. 2 hours until the consequence neither Rourke nor anyone at that gate could have imagined. A full command-level notification, triggered not by her, not by anything she did, but by his own official paperwork, filed in his own name, time-stamped and permanent. He had built the trap himself. He just hadn't realized yet that he was the one standing inside it. By early afternoon, the holding room had gone quiet in a different way. Ferris had stopped trying to make conversation an hour earlier, unnerved by how completely she seemed to not need it. She sat facing the door. She counted her breaths. 4 in, hold 4, 4 out, hold 4, the same rhythm she'd used at the gate, the same rhythm that had carried her through rooms far worse than this one. 23 minutes came and went. Somewhere, a communications window closed without the check in it had been waiting for, and 3 people in a different country noted the silence and began moving according to a contingency they'd hoped never to use. 63 minutes came and went. The automated protocol activated exactly on schedule, and a notification quietly climbed a chain of command that had nothing to do with Fort Calloway's ordinary chain, skipping past majors and colonels entirely, landing directly on a desk that answered to almost no one. Rourke, still unaware, was in the middle of describing the encounter for a 4th time to a different audience when the door to the administrative building opened and 4 men walked in wearing insignia most of the soldiers present had only seen in briefing photographs. 4-star general escort included, moving fast, faces unreadable. The room went silent before anyone announced why. Reyes felt it first, the way you feel weather changing in your joints. He straightened without being told to. Rourke, still riding the high of his own performance, stepped forward like he intended to brief them. "Sir, I can walk you through the security concern personally. I was the one who—" "Where is she?" the lead officer said. Not a question. 5 words, no patience behind them. The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Rourke's jaw tightened. His mouth opened and nothing useful came out of it. They walked him to the holding room. The door opened. She looked up. The first time all day she'd looked directly at anyone, and something passed across the lead officer's face that had nothing to do with rank and everything to do with recognition. He came to attention so fast the sound of his boots cracked against the floor like a rifle shot. "Commander," he said. The word landed in that room like a blade dropped flat on stone. Rourke's blood ran cold. His mouth opened again, and again nothing came out. He looked at her, at the same woman he'd called sweetheart 4 hours earlier, the same woman he'd ordered searched and detained and cross-referenced for the entertainment of 19 soldiers doing morning PT, and for the first time all day he actually saw her. She stood. She rolled her sleeve down over the scar on her forearm, but not before the tattoo beneath it caught the light, a trident wrapped around a single word in old-style lettering, classified insignia that only a handful of men on that entire base were cleared to recognize. Reyes recognized it. He'd seen it exactly once before, 7 years earlier. On a wall of photographs he wasn't supposed to still remember, Master Sergeant Hollis Reyes had watched her all morning without saying a single word, and now, in the doorway of a holding room that suddenly felt very small, he finally spoke. Not to the generals. To her. "Voss," he said quietly, "I thought you were dead." She held his gaze for a long moment. "So did they," she said. 4 words. The truest 4 words she'd spoken all day. Reyes came to attention on his own, unordered, unhurried. The kind of salute that means more than any command ever could, because nobody made him do it. He chose it. 8 Navy officers behind him followed within the same breath, then the 2 privates who'd searched her trunk, then the escort team, until the hallway outside that holding room held 19 people standing at rigid attention for a woman half their size, wearing a contractor's badge that had never told the whole truth. The lead officer turned to Rourke. His voice was quiet now, and quiet was so much worse than shouting. "Captain, do you have any idea whose classified file you just referenced through an unsecured request this morning?" Rourke said nothing. There was nothing left to say. His own report, filed in his own name at 10:50 that morning, sat open on a monitor down the hall, the exact document that had confirmed, for investigators who had been quietly circling him for 6 weeks, that he had access to systems he had no business touching, and had used them exactly the way a man covering for something might use them. Commander Elena Voss hadn't exposed him. He had exposed himself, on paper, with his own signature, because he couldn't resist an audience. "She's been undercover on this post for 11 months, the lead officer said, loud enough now for the hallway to hear, investigating a smuggling pipeline moving ordnance off this base through checkpoint paperwork. Paperwork just like the report you filed this morning, Captain. The kind only someone with checkpoint authority could quietly redirect." Something flickered across Rourke's face, just for a heartbeat. Then it was gone, replaced by the particular gray stillness of a man doing arithmetic on how much trouble he was actually in. Voss said nothing more. She didn't need to. Her mission had never been about him. 7 years earlier, a 4-man reconnaissance unit had gone dark outside a checkpoint eerily similar to this one, and the official report blamed enemy contact. She had spent 7 years learning that the real story involved stolen ordnance, a paper trail, and men in uniform who profited from both. Rourke wasn't the architect. He was a symptom. But his arrogance, his need to be watched, his own filed report, it had cracked open exactly the piece of the pipeline she'd spent 11 months trying to reach. By late afternoon, the base had gone quiet, and the particular way places go quiet after something enormous has happened just out of sight. Rourke was gone, escorted off post by men who didn't introduce themselves. His career ending not with a court-martial headline, but with a quiet folder that would follow him for the rest of his life. Nobody at the gate saw him again. Reyes found her near the motor pool at dusk, sitting on the tailgate of a truck, watch on her wrist, the same stillness she'd carried since 6:40 that morning, except now it looked less like armor and more like rest. 11 months, he said, sitting down beside her without asking. And nobody knew. Somebody was supposed to, she said. That was the point. He nodded slowly. You could have told me this morning, before it went that far. You already knew, she said. You just didn't say it out loud. That got the smallest exhale from him. Almost a laugh, almost not. He looked at the watch on her wrist, the same government model he hadn't seen issued in nearly a decade. Your old man wore one just like that, he said. Before Syria, something moved behind her eyes, brief, controlled, gone as fast as it came. She breathed in, 4 counts, held it 4, let it out. There's still a name on my list, she said quietly. One I haven't closed yet. Rourke wasn't running this alone, and the man above him isn't on this post. She looked toward the tree line, toward the dark settling over the checkpoint she'd been dragged through 11 hours earlier. There's a surveillance photo from a rooftop in Syria. Taken the week the unit went dark. Someone was standing in the frame who shouldn't have been there. I still don't know who. Reyes didn't answer right away. Some things don't need an answer, just company while you sit with them. You'll find him, he said finally. I know, she said. 2 words. The last 2 she said that day. She stood, rolled her sleeve back down over the scar and the tattoo beneath it, and walked toward a car that would carry a new badge, a new name, a new checkpoint somewhere else. Because the mission she was running had never actually ended. It had only paused long enough for one arrogant man to learn what stillness can hide. If this is the kind of story that gets under your skin, the kind where the quiet ones are never who they seem, hit that share button and pass it along. Because somewhere out there, someone is still underestimating exactly the wrong person.